inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7. The Chancellor's budget has led to the highest borrowing costs since the pandemic, growth flatlining, business confidence plummeting and job freezes. And who has Labour chosen to pay the price for their economic illiteracy? Pensioners, family businesses and farmers. For months, farmers, farming businesses, professional advisors and economists, and now 8 major supermarkets have warned the Chancellor that she has got her figures wrong. But ministers cleave desperately to their soundbites. Let us hope they listen to the OBR. Yesterday, the independent OBR released additional information about this particular measure. They reiterated the high uncertainty of the predicted yield. They noted that the yield of this measure is likely to be reduced by 35% because of behavioural responses, that it is unlikely to reach a steady state for 20 years, and expressed grave concerns about the impact on older individuals and their ability to plan. In short, the reassurances provided by ministers are falling almost as flat as the economy. Now, the Chief Secretary has lectured this House about the perils of sidelining the OBR. So, in light of this analysis, will the Minister now commit to a full and proper review of this dreadful policy? And the public have noticed that government ministers are failing to answer reasonable questions about their policies. Will the Minister therefore please give straight answers to the farmers and businesses watching this today? In light of this new analysis, how many farms does the Treasury think will be affected by changes to APR, BPR and BPR alone? What assessment has he made of the CAAV's findings that the Chancellor has underestimated the number of farms affected by this by a factor of 5? How many tenant farmers will be evicted? And as worrying reports of suicides amongst farmers begin to emerge, will he please do as the DEFRA Secretary has failed to do, which is measure the number of suicides over the next 12 months so that we can understand the human cost of this policy? And finally, Mr. Speaker, why does he think that Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, Marks and Spencer, Aldi, Lidl and Co-op all have come out against this tax policy and believe the Treasury's figures to be wrong? Why are they wrong and he thinks he's right?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I think there may be some confusion on the benches opposite about what the OBR data shows, because the data which was published by the OBR yesterday refers to exactly the same costing as was published at budget. It sets out the approach to modelling and the costing, which is typical and in line with other tax policies. Indeed, the data referred to by the OBR makes clear in its statement the OBR's role is to provide independent scrutiny and certification of whether the government's policy costings are reasonable and central, and that's exactly what they've done in publishing this extra information showing the modelling behind the data that was published at the time of the budget. And indeed, the honourable member, the right honourable member, the shadow minister, asked questions about the data about the number of affected estates claiming APR and indeed APR BPR, some 530 as an upper estimate, are in Table 1.1 of the OBR document published yesterday, which is consistent with what we have been saying for many months since the budget. And I think that one of the confusions on the benches opposite is to confuse the value of farms with the value of claims under inheritance tax. And the only way to truly understand the impact of changes to inheritance tax policy on inheritance tax claims is to look at the claims data itself. In terms of working with the retail sector and large supermarkets, we're working in partnership with the large supermarket chains to make sure they're driving economic growth. We're very clear that some of the decisions we had to take at budget were difficult decisions which will have consequences, but we're determined to work with businesses right across the country to drive economic growth, the number one mission of this government.
This measure is now revealed to be spectacularly ill-considered, and that's leaving aside the fact that it's also a breathtaking betrayal of farmers who were promised this wouldn't happen before the election. It places farmers on the same pedestal as speculative millionaires seeking to dodge tax by getting involved in farming instead of being intergenerational farmers. It's put an immediate brake on investment in farming. That threatens to lower yields and drive up food prices. That threatens inflationary pressures on the already perilous situation of the economy in the United Kingdom. And you cannot just agree with the OBR when it suits. The government must agree with the OBR regardless of what they're saying. So will the Minister please take this opportunity to respectfully pause and take some time to think about this and get something that will actually deliver for the Treasury, whatever that is, but not put our family farming sector under?
Mr. Speaker, there seems still to be on the opposition benches some confusion about what the OBR publication yesterday sets out. It reiterates the costings that were published at the budget on October the 30th. It's the same costings. It's explaining how those costings were arrived at so that people understand the calculations behind them. But the costings are the same as those which were published at the time of the budget.
After years of Tory failing of our rural communities, including a dodgy Australian trade deal that is utterly shameful, it is a great pity that the new government have picked up the baton from the Conservatives previously. I know from Orkney to the Isles of Scilly that Liberal Democrat colleagues are extremely concerned about the impact of these proposals. The report that was published yesterday clearly demonstrates that there is uncertainty over the next 2 decades of the income from these misguided family farm tax. So in light of this and the fact that it will be hitting older farmers particularly and impacting on those who put the food on the tables of the United Kingdom, will the Minister do the right thing and scrap this tax?
Mr. Speaker, the Office of Budget Responsibility document published yesterday refers to the level of uncertainty associated with this policy, and that is exactly the same as what was set out at the time of the budget. It's a typical way in which the OBR responds to new measures. It was set out at the time of the budget, and what was published yesterday simply reiterates their conclusions at the end of October.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Have you noticed a pattern that on a Thursday, a Treasury Minister is asked to come to the Commons to answer an urgent question, and there's barely a soul on the Labour benches behind them when they do that?
I'm not quite sure that's relevant to the question you're going to ask, surely. Come on!
Specific to the Office for Budget Responsibility projections of the revenue that this measure raises, by 2029 they're forecasting £500 million, which is in the context of tax revenues that are over £1,150 billion, is a very small number. And what value does he put on food security for the United Kingdom?
He's asking the question.
Well, I thank the Right Honourable Member for her question. And obviously, as a government, we put the highest priority on food security, which is why our policies are setting out to support that and the farming sector more widely. This policy is one of many difficult decisions we had to take in the budget to balance the public finances, to support public services, and to provide the economic stability we need for investment and growth.